Hi, and welcome to the latest webinar from us here at RavenPack. So my name's Yannick, and I'm a senior account executive, and we'll be joined in a little sec by Peter Hafez, our chief data scientist. Really following on from our last webinar a few months ago, we wanted to follow up with a couple of pieces of new research, predominantly focus on how we can go from raw text to signal. And here we'll be just looking at the agenda for today. Okay, so to start off with, I'll just tell you a little bit about RavenPack. For those of you who don't know us, I'll just go through that just for a minute or so. I'll touch on the Edge product line, followed by passing it over to Peter, and he'll go through the annotations product in a bit more detail, show you what it looks like, and kind of more importantly, go through a couple of the research pieces that him and his team have been building with the product. At the end, there'll be a Q&A, but please, everyone, at any point, you can go to the chat, ask any questions. You can do it anonymously or with your name, and we'll get to that at the end. So please feel free to start typing in. We'll have 10 or 15 minutes at the end. Just so you know, the session is being recorded as well, and we'll send it to all attendees at the end. Cool. So a little bit about RavenPack. So believe it or not, we've actually been around for 23 years, and really we're a natural language processing specialist. Okay, and this is turning text into something that's actually usable from an investment perspective. Okay, and there's really a few main parts to what it is that we do. A lot of this is built around our entity recognition system or knowledge graph, which you'll hear us mention a lot. And this is our ability to ingest millions of documents in real time and tag them with companies, commodities, currencies, people, places, organizations, and a whole host of different information that you're able to then search. And a lot of the time we will then link this to a rich taxonomy of events that we have, 7,500 events nearly, that you can then filter for. And a lot of the stats you see on the screen there about, proven alpha, 70% of the world's leading hedge funds. This is because we've been converting all of this text into numbers, into sentiment scores that are then back testable along a long history of point in time archive with real-time feeds available across our product lines, which I will go into in a little bit more detail in a second. And this is what our clients use across all asset classes to generate alpha from text. Okay, so just to go into the product lines a little bit, okay, I won't speak too much about it today, but we do have bigdata.com. That's our latest product. It's a lot more AI ready, and I'm more than happy to follow up with people after this. But today we'll be predominantly focusing on Edge and the product lines within Edge, of which there are 3. Okay, and I'll just start in the middle here. So with analytics, this is our core product, and a lot of you may know this product. Okay, it's rows and columns, and there's a sample in a second which I'll show you. But this is your what we call our granular data. You're able to filter 82 fields and come up with the universe that you're interested in and generate scores relatively easily with a lot of flexibility. It's a very rich data set across these fields. And if you want something actually more simple than that, we do have something called factors. This RP factors is a kind of pre-aggregated version of these 82 fields, right? Some of you may want something that's easily back testable. You just want the CSV files or the archive. You can pull that from factors from research that Peter and his team have done, and then you're able to easily back test that and see if it adds value to your strategy. But kind of just to finish off, and really what today's about, it's about RavenPack Annotations. Okay, and this is the most granular of the Edge product line, and this is where you have the most flexibility to not just look at derived data, derived from the raw text, but actually goes into the raw text itself. Okay, and as we kind of think about annotations, I'll just quickly show you what analytics looks like, just as a little segue into annotations. So this is what a lot of you may be familiar with if you know RavenPack. This is rows, columns of lines of detections that we have within the text. So we're doing this, in near real time in terms of when we're ingesting this content, we're tagging it with all of these different fields. Well, this plus 50 or so more that you have. And you can see we have a timestamp to the millisecond, document ID, so it's all traceable. And the key thing with analytics is, like I said before, it's very rich. Right? There are a lot of fields, a lot of different sentiment scores, and you can filter for very granular events like revenue up, is it a fact, is it a forecast, these types of things. And this has worked, really well, and a lot of our clients really love this product. But you can see here, the event text, you don't get too much of the text, right? And the main reason for today, and I'll pass it over to Peter now, just to go through annotations is, okay, how can you go below analytics? How can you get more granular? What can you actually do with all of the derived analytics, all of the tags that we have, but also the raw text, and how you can actually use that raw text to generate even more alpha from a more bespoke angle.
Perfect. Thank you, Yannick. So hi everybody, Peter Hafez, Chief Data Scientist at RavenPack. So one of the things that we have with annotations, so the big question is why would you be interested in looking at annotations? You can already do a lot of things with analytics. However, one of the things that we have seen in the marketplace is that everyone has become sort of more sophisticated in how they are running their alpha pipelines. It's become easier over the years that we have been in this industry of NLP to work with text. So now, for instance, with the large language models that have emerged, both with the introduction of BERT models back in 2017 and more recently with generative AI, we can see that we saw the market was becoming more interested in consuming more granular data. And therefore we decided to launch what we today call RavenPack Annotations. It's always been a product that we had produced in the background, but we would derive analytics from it. So you can to some extent say that there was this kind of compression layer between this internally produced product that has now become publicly available to when you went to analytics. And of course, with any other compression exercise, you do lose some information. And what we have with annotations, and one of the reasons for why it's interesting to go there, is that you can extract information in a different way or construct your own features, your own analytics from this more granular information. So what is RavenPack Annotations? It's really the textual content that is structured in a structured JSON, ready to parse whatever information that you want. It operates at the document level, but you can also drill into sections and individual sentences and find all of the entities and events that we have detected within each of these different layers of the document. All of the entities are utilizing our point-in-time sensitive knowledge graph. So if you are running your own NLP or ML pipelines, but you don't want to maintain or sort of engage in the work of maintaining these large knowledge graphs, entity graphs, you can simply just use the RavenPack Annotations data sets and build on top of it. And that, of course, as you can imagine, gives you a lot more flexibility than with an analytics data set where you have to work with sort of these consolidated derived information. Here with annotations, you can still utilize all of these enrichments, but go even deeper as you see fit. And even if you feature engineer, you can sort of say, I only want the sentiment per sentence for the first paragraph, second paragraph, or whatever, as opposed to using the out-of-the-box methodology that RavenPack applies. So much more flexibility there. The annotations dataset, similar to analytics, comes with very deep historical archives. We have for certain content sources, content going back all the way to 2000. Other datasets may start in 2004, 2007, and so on, similar to what you will see with analytics. It's also available as a real-time feed for production use cases or when you put it into production, and that's of course also attractive. If you are to, let's say, build your own NLP processes or train your own models with this content, there's also an option of deploying the models that you have trained back on that same data and taking advantage of all of the enrichments also in a real-time setting. What's also nice here is that it's really a normalized way of looking at all of this content. So you might be consuming thousands of news sources. You might be looking at earnings call transcripts, as we will in this particular webinar. There's filings, there's all kinds of other content, and it's all being normalized into a similar type of format that makes it very, very easy to build on top of. But let's take a quick look at an actual sample file. I have taken an earnings call transcripts from Alphabet, the Q4 2025 earnings call. So just bear with me, I'll just flip screen into this particular record. So you should be able to see it now. So as you can see here, rendered in Firefox. You can see that there are different kind of layers here that you can work on in this annotations file. So there's some document level information. We'll skip the software version. Then you have content and the actual analytics. If we look at the document level, you can see that there is a document ID. So that ties in together all of the sections and sentences and so on under this particular document ID. You can start to drill into the actual source. Here it's FactSet transcripts. That's the provider ID here. And there's also a source ID and then the name, of course, itself. Then you can also look at other types of metadata. There's a timestamp, so you can see here when it was published, when the analytics were produced, and potential revision date as well. Here you can see that we added about a little more than, I would say, a second and a half from the transcripts hitting the RavenPack engine to the analytics having been produced. It's obviously a long document. If you have shorter news articles, it will be significantly faster. And then finally, you have other types of metadata. So you will get, let's look at the language. You will get information about the language. You have some participants in the transcript. So here you can get a full list of all of the participants. So you will have an actual operator of it. And then you have corporate representatives. And you can start to drill into these and then get additional information about them. So this is the head of investor relations at Alphabet. And you have a particular entity ID associated with that. You can also go in and see which analyst participated. Here's a Doc Anmuth analyst, and he's associated with JP Morgan Securities, right? So you get quite granular information about the participants. And then you have some reporting periods and other sort of supporting information. Next, I'll jump to the analytics. So this is what you may be more familiar with, similar to our RavenPack Analytics products. Those data points are also available within the transcripts data sets, within the annotations data sets. And they are sort of organized, again, at document level, at event level, and at entities level. At document level, you'll have some of our document level analytics. So you'll have a document sentiment score, the composite sentiment score, and other sentiments that work at the document level. You can then go to entities and then see how many entities were detected. So here you can see that there are 318 entities detected within the document. And you can start to drill in and see which ones they are. And you will have these different entity types. So for instance, here we are seeing a company detection. It's DeepMind Technologies. We can try to expand on that and see what kind of information we get here. Here we get, as mentioned, DeepMind. You get the country code. You learn that it's a direct detection. So that means that DeepMind was detected itself in the article. And you have some sentiment scores associated with that as well. So that would be like an entity sentiment where we aggregate all of the sentences within the document where DeepMind was mentioned. If we look at the last bit here before we go into the content itself, the content layer, you can see we also have all of our events. I expand a little too fast. So here, if we scroll down, you have 42 different events detected, and you can see the topics all in business, and then you can drill in again and saying, okay, there's a partnership event. We can expand on that and then see the full taxonomy of this, all the taxonomy layers of that detection. And you can also go into the roles that companies play. It's a partnership product, the rater, and so on. So there's sort of more granular information about the various roles within the event. The final thing I want to show from the annotations document is the content itself. So far, we have only looked at the enrichments, but you also can start to dig into the actual text. So here we see the actual title of the earnings call, some sentiment and so on. It's a little less interesting, so we'll try and dig into the body. You can see that there are 176 sentences within that document. And we can start to expand here. So if we jump to the bottom, you can see here, you start to enter the Q&A session, and you can start to expand here. There's an analyst here that starts asking 2 different questions. So we can expand on it. You get the actual sentence. You get also an embedding to go with that. All right. So it's an embedding with 383 characters, or numbers, or the dimensions, or 384 actually. So you have the actual embedding. You also have these all the individual sentences where you have start and end date. So you have all of the coordinates, and that's also important to highlight for the entities. You will have all of the coordinates for all of the entity detections, which makes masking very, very easy. If you, for instance, wants to put it into a machine learning model and you want to train a model on it, you don't want to train on Apple or on Alphabet as entities, you can mask them easily since you have all of these coordinates. So very granular information, and that of course gives you a lot of flexibility in building features, training models, and so on from the content. So moving back to the presentation and the actual use cases. We have worked in the data science team with these types of files, right? And started to extract or parse them to get the information that we want. So I'll take you through 2 simple use cases that are related to some extent, as they are both using the Q&A session or section. We wanted to move beyond sort of the more prepared remarks in the actual presentation and see if we could extract some alphas on the more unscripted Q&A parts. And in particular, so we are using what I showed before. You can dig in, and there's actually labels that will say this is a question, this is an answer, and so on. I didn't get to show you that, but if you expanded these sentences a little more, you could actually see that detection of the question and an answer. So you can easily filter and get that out of the transcript. You, as I mentioned, you could also get the actual analyst, so that also allows you to sort of cluster on a particular analyst or on whomever answers the question and so on, and then see whether there's if it carries any signals to track the sort of Q&A related signals. So in our research, and it's actually split in 2 different research papers, we look at communication quality. In paper number 1, we look at linguistic transparency, where we use a so-called FLESH score. And in paper number 2, we take a different approach to it, where we look at the actual sentiment of the questions and the sentiment of the answers, right? So if we look at the first study first, so the linguistic transparency and the FLESH score, we are basically looking at trying to say how complex is the question versus how complex is the answer. And we are really looking at 2 dimensions here. So we're looking at the average sentence length in words per section. And we're also looking at the average syllable count per word per section. And of course, if you're using more complex language, you get in essence, you actually get a lower score, and that means more complexity. And we would then look at the difference between the answers the questions and the answer, and then take sort of an absolute difference to look at whether there's massive sort of gap between the complexity of the language used. So it might be a simple question versus a complex answer, as an example. That's not a good sign necessarily. In the other area, if we look at the sentiment signal, we really look at the tone of the question and the tone of the answer, and we keep them as separate signals that can be combined into an overall strategy as well, if you wish, but we try to build 2 separate strategies for the 2. And we are simply just taking the average sentiment across all of the answers and the average sentiment across all of the questions, and we are subtracting the average sentiment from the previous 2 earnings call transcripts to sort of look at removing a baseline in sentiment throughout the Q&A sessions. So here's an example of the linguistic transparency score. So here on the right-hand side, you can see what were your China sales. That would get a high flesh score, which means that it's a simple question. And the answer in this case is more elaborate. So we are encouraged by underlying performance dynamics across multiple verticals. So that is a little bit more complex. It gets a lower flesh score and therefore is equivalent to a more complex answer. And then the difference in this case would be a 61, which means that there's low transparency. There's a wide gap. If it comes to sentiment, as I mentioned, we would split that by analyst versus management, and that would give us the two different sentiment scores. For instance, a low question sentiment means that they are more bearish on the question side, and on the answer side, this is similar. Low answer sentiment would also mean a bearish one. So for instance, here, Samuel, can you walk us through the deterioration in subscription growth this quarter? That would be a more bearish view from the analyst, where the answer from the management would be, we are cautious about Q1 headwinds. Though we remain confident in the long-term trajectory, it still has this more cautionary negative tilt, and also with the explanation of headwinds. So that would also come out bearish here. So let's take a look. In terms of, we have built these two signals, the flesh score as well as the sentiment score, and we can use those across the full cross section of our universe, and we would end up with a rank. We would be able to rank all of our full universe, and then we go into portfolio construction, right? So we would apply it with different smoothing in order to slow down the signal potentially. We would, as a second step, we look at it more from a quantile perspective. So we go top and bottom to be able to go more in the extreme and get a stronger signal out. We try to target a 100% gross exposure. So that means 50% long, 50% short in this case. We have a maximum allocation cap of 10% for a single name, and we'll do that in a step forward, or sort of walk forward way, looking at a 10-year backtest. So what does performance look like? So on the right hand side, you can see the cumulative return graph for a different decay. So 1 means faster decay, and a higher number just means slower decay. And as you can see, it's a relatively fast signal. We do find value in that 1 to 3 decay area, where we are seeing on the question side, we get a information ratio, Sharpe ratio around 1.47. On the answer side, it's 0.48, and the spread comes to 0.66, with a 440 basis points of annualized return spread between the two. So it is perhaps a little bit on the weaker side, but the idea is that you can build multiple of sort of these types of signals that can be combined into an overall Q&A strategy, transcript strategy. If we look at on the sentiment side, we do see somewhat stronger performance. On the left-hand side, at the bottom here, you see the sentiment around the questions, and on the right-hand side, you see the sentiment around the answers. And the idea is that you go long companies with generally positive questions and short the ones with negative questions, and vice versa, or similar on the answer side. So you go long the companies with positive answers and you short the companies with negative answers. And in this case, we are able to get sort of in the range of the 370 to 410 basis points annualized return spread, and Sharpe ratios around 0.78, like they're quite similar, around the 0.78 and 0.75. if we look at it sort of with different decays, you can see that it sort of maxes out around that 3 to 7 day smoothing, which effectively means that you are having holding periods of around a week to a week and a half. And you can also see at the bottom, we try to see if we could, given that we do have a decent cross section, we were trying to see what names, what size companies were actually driving performance, and we can see that it's actually, you can see performance across the full cross section. So there is a positive return spread in the top 100 companies, if that was our universe, and then expanding into the top 1,000, we see good performance. So it's quite robust from a universe selection perspective. And with that, we sort of have kept it at a little high level at this point. At this point, I'd like to hand it over to Yannick as he kicks off the Q&A session.
Yeah, awesome. Cheers, Peter. Yeah, super interesting across those two use cases. And yeah, just wanted to follow up with that. Obviously, we've spoken a little bit about annotations, and the research has been predominantly on transcripts, right? But as a company, we do have access to various other data sets. So this includes some of the ones you see on the screen, including news and more importantly, premium behind paywall news. So you can see things there like Financial Times, MT Newswise, etc. Podcast, regulatory filings, of which we're expanding our coverage there across multiple providers, and jobs postings as well. So both of the papers are available, and we're more than happy to share them with you. And as Peter said, we did just want to go through a couple of questions which have been filing in throughout the presentation. So I'm just going to start off with one here. Actually, there's two. So we have an anonymous one coming in, which is about the delivery of annotations. But then we also have one from Kenneth talking about, do we offer API access to the underlying JSON so that you can query specific sections, such as only extracting the Q&A across multiple transcript files and run your own models locally? Or do we provide a hosted solution where you can run custom models within the platform so you can perform analytics across these documents without needing to pull large volumes of data locally? Okay. So I'll start off with this one. I mean, I'll take this one to begin with. I mean, in terms of the RavenPack Annotations product, a lot of the basis of this product is our clients using this will host this on-prem. Okay, so when it comes to annotations itself, the underlying JSON will be delivered either by AWS, or we do have a Snowflake delivery mechanism, which I know is something that someone else asked, where you get access to absolutely everything. Okay, and we have a couple of options within this where you can store the archive on-prem, but then also receive either daily updates of these kind of large Avro files or JSON files with embeddings on a daily basis, with an intraday option as well, which is delivered via a kind of near real-time Kinesis stream. Okay, I'll kind of just reference something else very quickly, because one of the products I mentioned at the start, which was the bigdata.com API, is something that is a slightly more hosted version of annotations. There's a lot of nuances, right? And I don't want to go into it, but we have multiple different products that are kind of hosted or unhosted depending on your requirements. So always happy to discuss those on a more case-by-case basis. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Peter, or should we move on?
No, I think that's fine. So, but just to, I mean, we have a Snowflake version of annotations. We have the S3 bucket where you can get it, and then a Kinesis stream for real-time consumption. And I think that's the primary thing. And when you look at the Kinesis stream, I would say that it's typically sub-second in terms of the real-time nature of it. So you can definitely roll it out into a real-time type strategy framework.
Perfect. All right, we're going to go a little bit more complex, and this one's for you, Peter. So, what would you say are the best practices? And this is from Ted. So he knows a few of our different products. What would you say are the best practices in simultaneously using edge annotations and big data for prompts to build some kind of AI model or agentic workflow to track something like major macroeconomic shifts? Like how do you see this problem?
Yeah, I think, I mean, if you look at big data is a little, it's centered around being more of a search and retrieval system. So that means that you have something you want to search for. So it's more like a pull kind of mechanism, right? I want something, I pull the content. Where with our Edge product line, it's both pull and push. So you're actually pushing content to the user. Of course, you can schedule polls with big data, but with annotations, you actually can get this sort of real-time push. So that means that you can, in principle, build around any analytics or any feature that you might construct on top of our Edge analytics or annotations products to trigger to say, okay, I will track within the RavenPack taxonomy geopolitical risk. So I create different dimensions. I want to track war and conflict. I might look at conventions, so you can see, okay, there's something happening in Iran and between Iran and the US, or you can see Ukraine versus Russia and so on. And you can sort of look at these themes within the taxonomy as they play out. And when you then see, let's say, a co-mention volume spike associated with a geopolitical risk theme, that could create a trigger to go and hit big data to pull an actual narrative and say, now I want a narrative write-up of what's actually driving this particular co-mention volume spike that indicates that something important happened. So that would be one way of being able to combine the two, the push mechanism from Edge and sort of the narrative writing with big data.
Awesome. Cheers for that, Peter. So just moving on, we've got a couple more here about kind of delivery and more importantly, actually storage here. So like how, Peter, do you think, firstly, you demoed the embeddings model, right? And we give you access to that, but like, how do you see our clients storing this? How do they store it? What's the best way to do this?
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the delivery mechanisms that we have is Snowflake, and we do actually also operate with the files within Snowflake. But so it's definitely possible. We of course have some of our clients that would load it into Databricks or something like that as well. But I would say it really very much depends on your use case, right? So if you look at in our case, I mean, we in principle have all of this annotated content in big data, right? And in big data, because we are interested in doing more of a similarity search or hybrid search, we have, you know, all of the content is vectorized. So we have stored it into a vector database and then built this search and retrieval system on top. So if you as a client, you're interested in bringing content on-prem, right? And then powering various different use cases, you obviously have to optimize the storage around that particular use case. If it's just for filtering purposes and so on, then you might store it in Snowflake. If you want to have it more available for search purposes semantically, you might want to work with it in a vector database. Of course, Snowflake has some options as well, but you can sort of you need to think about the use case and where you would want to store it.
Yeah, and that's actually a good point, and it kind of leads us on to our next question, actually, because this is something we've always faced, I think, even with the analytics product and now talking about annotations, which is more granular. But Peter, from your experience, how are you seeing investors using this signal, like the signal in your research, but as an accompaniment to their existing, you know, market data signals or whatever other data sets they're using? Like, what are the best ways to apply this?
So from an annotations perspective, I mean, there are different ways that you can go with it, and it's of course very, very rich. It's really an empowering data set because you can start to think about, you know, building your own either features. So it may be that, you know, if you look at RavenPack Analytics, we have a certain way of measuring relevance, right? But you can create an alternative using annotations. You can do sort of a different multi-dimensional way of measuring relevance and tailor that specifically to a transcript, the way you look at the world, a transcript, right? With your domain expertise, you can tailor it to a filing, you can tailor it to news, you can tailor it to, you know, a podcast or whatever it might be that you want to do. So you get that flexibility of injecting your own domain expertise for feature engineering. And we're definitely seeing people doing it, building new sort of analytics from it. So feature engineer. In the case that I showed was really like you are digging into certain sections of a document and you are not interested in all of it, and then you are extracting very targeted signals from that using text. But we find that very empowering in the data science team, right? Because most of our work, we sit as internal clients as well, and we have done a lot of work, of course, with our analytics, and that's very exciting. But with annotations, we get even more flexibility of building signals that you can't necessarily build out of the box from our analytics products. So that's sort of that more traditional layer that if you are used to the analytics, you can sort of take that step deeper and build your own analytics from it. Then there's the other area where it's more about you running your own NLP processes, right? And applying, I don't know if it's a bird model or something like that, or a fine-tuned bird model, whatever you might have built, where you're running your own NLP processes. And here it's just becoming so much easier because you have all of these enrichments and normalizations taking place. You can focus on the actual use case, on the information that you're willing to extract, instead of focusing on the table stakes, like maintaining a point-in-time sensitive knowledge graph and actually doing the entity detection. And because you have these coordinates available, it's very, very useful, such that you're saying, oh, there's a lot of positive news recently about Apple, or in my training sample. I don't want to suddenly skew whenever Apple is in news that it's leaning positive. Well, you can easily mask the entities and sort of do this kind of work where you're saying, no, you are not actually training on the companies themselves, but more what is happening around the companies. And that, I think, is also is particularly interesting if you want to do it, let's say with Gen AI, and you're moving into more of the big data area, right, where all of these content sources are cleared for use in generative AI use cases. You also can take advantage of this sort of enrichment with the knowledge graph and with the coordinates, because, for instance, we have done a lot of work where we have building our own data sets, right? Our own data sets from big data, and of course also from annotations. But if we want to put it into an LLM to help us label or do some things and building a 10-year archive, I can basically significantly reduce or even eliminate look-ahead bias by masking all the entities easily before I feed it to the LLM and saying, is the target company really a target of supply chain disruption, yes or no, right? Then you can sort of build data sets in a much easier way now that you have the coordinates that will allow you to mask entities.
Yeah, and cheers for that, Peter, because there's a lot of different ways that you can manipulate the data. And just from a high level as well, just the second part of the question about combining anything that you do from annotations with, proprietary signals. There are multiple ways to combine this, right? And I think most of our clients and most investors will have multiple different factors or multiple different signals that they're working with, and the combination of this to your existing factors can make a lot of difference, right? So, we generally will recommend a few different ways to apply these types of signals. For example, you could apply this as a tilt to your existing factors, where, okay, let's say that your market data, your flows, whatever it might be that you're using is saying, okay, we want to buy Alphabet, right? But then once you've kind of dug deeper into the transcripts and you see the Q&A transparency and maybe the sentiment or your final score is actually relatively negative, so maybe you'll tilt that buy signal down a little bit, right? You can start to think about it in this way. And Peter, there's a few other ways you can start to apply this as well, yeah?
Yeah, no. I mean, we've definitely seen, if you look at it more from a trader perspective, right, that it's not, there's sort of like, you talk about these gap signals as an example. Like if you see a gap in returns overnight, you tend to see sort of a reversal signal in the following trading session. But when you start to condition on, let's say, information from news and stuff like that, and saying, okay, was the gap, overnight gap return actually supported by news, right? Then you actually are more likely to see a continuation of the trend in the following trading signal. So news signals can be very, very good for conditioning signals to figure out whether you are likely to see a continuation or you're seeing a reversal. And of course, if you're able to distinguish which names will be continuation and which names will be reversal, then both signals or even the original reversal signal that you might have become stronger. And we are seeing that as Yannick was also getting into, like conditioning on momentum signals. When is momentum running out? Well, it may be when sentiment starts to move against you. What about value? How do you prevent yourself from moving into a value trap? Well, it might be that a company seemed cheap because there's been a lot of recent bad press that hasn't been reflected on the balance sheet yet. All these sort of things you can do, to enrich and enhance existing signals that you might be trading on, and it's giving you, similar to market data, like this real-time read on the market. But compared to price, you just observe price, and prices can move for many different reasons. Here you can have a real-time signal that actually gives you sort of the underlying reasons, and that often gives you a better view on how long something might actually trend. So I tend to say, for instance, that sentiment will give you a sense of direction and potential impact. But if you can label it when saying this is earnings related, this is layoff related, this is corporate action related, or M&A related, you can get an idea of what is the information decay. And that's something that is just hard to get from a pure price signal. It's too generic in some sense, right? So combining sort of this more explanatory or predictive label can be very valuable in a sort of a trading, but also in an investment setting.
All right, Peter, awesome. Thank you very much. And we'll be coming to the end of the presentation. So as a quick reminder, this has been recorded. We'll send it over to you, and our marketing team will certainly reach out in case any of you have any questions. Myself and Peter and the rest of the team are more than happy to answer those, and share any of the materials that we've been over today. So really enjoyed you joining, and many thanks.
Thank you.